On this edition of the Nesson College Hockey Podcast, Beanpot Preview, we give you our thoughts on the upcoming Beanpot tournament. We speak with players and coaches from all four schools, and we have Logan Mullen, hockey expert Logan Mullen, in the studio to break down the tournament. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Nesson College Hockey Podcast, a special edition of the Nesson College Hockey Podcast. I'm Dakota Randall, alongside always Patrick McAvoy. Patrick, how are you?
I'm okay.
Great, okay. We also are joined by Nesson all-around hockey guru, Logan Mullen.
I appreciate that.
A real favorite of the staff. He's going to be covering the Beanpot games this weekend. This is going to be a Beanpot preview episode. Logan, just tell us what you're all about.
What am I all about?
What's your MO?
My MO, write a lot about hockey, watch a lot of hockey, college, minors, pros.
Yes, if you're familiar with Logan's work, you know he does a lot of great original reporting columns on the Boston Bruins. Great Bruins right over here at Nesson.com, so check him out. But for this week and for the next couple weeks, he's focusing on the Beanpot. Including in that is yesterday we went to Beanpot Media Day. We talked to some players, we talked to some coaches. So we'll play some sound from that. We'll give you our thoughts on each team, the tournament as a whole, the 68th annual Men's Beanpot Tournament, and the 42nd annual Women's Beanpot Tournament, I believe. I could have those wrong. So all that good stuff. We'll also touch on the week that was, give you our 3 stars in Hockey East, and go over the polls. But before we go any further, I want to give you the Nesson schedule for the weekend and Monday and Tuesday, Beanpot. So it all starts Friday with a pair of women's hockey games. UConn at Northeastern at 2 p.m. That's on Nesson. And then Vermont at BU at 7 p.m. on Nesson Plus. Saturday, as part of our Super Saturday, tons of college action, mostly college basketball, but we do have one hockey game. That's UNH at UConn at 4 p.m. on Nesson. No hockey on Sunday, but then Monday, the men's Beanpot semifinals. So it starts Harvard at Northeastern at 5 p.m. on Nesson. Then BC versus BU at 8 p.m. on Nesson Plus. So both those games are on, BC versus BU at 8 p.m. on Nesson. Both games are on Nesson, my mistake. And then Tuesday, the women's Beanpot semifinal, Harvard and Northeastern at 5 p.m. That's on Nesson Plus. And BC against BU at 8 p.m. also on Nesson Plus. Remember, all of our hockey's coverage is brought to you by Rockland Trust, where each relationship matters. So we'll get into the Beanpot. We'll talk to Logan some more. We'll go over all this stuff, but as always, we want to start with our Hockey East 3 stars of the week. I'll start first with Mike Robinson, goalie from UNH. He allowed 1 goal over 2 games against UMass as the Wildcats earned a win and a tie over the Minutemen. He stopped 57 of 58 shots on the weekend. UNH now 13, 9-2 overall, and 6th in Hockey East. And so, again, the jury's out on just how good the Wildcats are, but they've beaten a lot of good teams this year. I believe this is their 2nd victory over the Minutemen. And they're in the playoff standings for Hockey East, so they should make the tournament without any issue. And they're just outside of the polls, but they're just on the cusp. And I think just in general, I don't know if they're national championship contenders. Obviously, I'd like them to be. I'm a UNH fan. But if nothing else, I think we can agree at this point that UNH is a threat come Hockey East tournament time. And they always, I guess, their greatest weakness is also their greatest strength in that they seem to play down to their competition, but also up against their competition. They play well against UMass and BC and BU, while they have a couple suspect losses. But in general, they've been great against teams like UMass, and Mike Robinson had a big weekend for them, again stopping 57 to 58 shots. So he is my 1st star of the week.
Up next, we got Tim Doherty, forward from Maine. He had 2 goals and 3 assists as the Black Bears had, count them, 2 overtime victories over Boston College.
How many, Pat?
1. No, not 1.
Okay.
2.
All right.
He had the game-winning goal Friday and assisted on the game winner the next night. Obviously, it's a huge weekend for Maine. This is just the beginning of some flambéing I'm going to do with Boston College throughout this episode.
I'm not happy with the Eagles, Patrick.
I'm not happy with them today.
Yeesh, be careful.
But Tim Doherty, he's the reason why. That guy is a very good player, and he's the 2nd star of the week. There's nothing else you can say about him.
Yeah, Tim Doherty had a great weekend, and again, a strong weekend for Maine. They really needed it. Earlier in the season, they looked like a real surprise contender in Hockey East, and not a team a lot of people expected to do much. And then they started getting some really great wins and making some noise, and they kind of fell back to the pack a little bit. So they needed a weekend like this, and it's important for them. I believe they're still just outside of the playoff standings. Top 8 in Hockey East make it, but it's within striking distance. There's plenty of the season left. So good weekend for Maine and great weekend for Tim Doherty. Finally, Patrick Harper from BU. scored 2 goals and added an assist in the Terriers' 5-0 win over Lowell. BU's just 9-8-6 overall, but it's 5th in Hockey East, so they're in the playoffs as of right now. Abby O'Connell believes this team is getting healthy at the right time. I tend to agree with him. BU has been trending in the right direction, including this win over Lowell, and Patrick Harper was a big part of it. Had a great game, so he is my 3rd star of the week. That's all I got. 3 stars.
It's pretty good. That's a pretty good trio, I would say, for the week.
Yeah, there are a lot of great performances, but that's all we got for now. Okay, so before we get into the polls and the Beanpot stuff, just kind of want to run through a few notable games from the past week. Bemidji State and Minnesota State split. I believe this says more about Bemidji State. They've been a sneaky good team over the past few weeks, and they got a really big win over Minnesota State this weekend. Gets them into the polls, and watch out for Bemidji State. They often get overlooked, but they're a really good team. 2 great WCHA teams. Also solid stuff from Alaska and Michigan teams. Northern Michigan ties and beats Fairbanks. Lake Superior beats then ties Anchorage. A lot of underrated programs there, and if you watched any of that, those are some good games. Cornell beats Dartmouth by 1, then ties Harvard. I think just in general, some good AC hockey from those guys. North Dakota splits with Minnesota Duluth. Minnesota Duluth, the team we haven't been able to figure out much this season, the 2-time defending national champions. But this is a weekend where I think they won 6-4 against North Dakota, and you see glimpses throughout this year of just how good that team can be. And I have to believe that when it comes to it, they'll be a factor for the national championship. Notre Dame splits with Wisconsin, 2 teams I still can't figure out. Penn State splits with Michigan State. So again, the Big Ten just so competitive. And Sacred Heart beats Yale, and then Quinnipiac, which brings us to the polls.
That's a good
Sacred
transition.
Heart, it's a great transition. That's what we do here. So real quick, I'll go through it, and Pat, I know you have your takeaways. So number 1, Cornell again, and then followed by North Dakota, Minnesota State, Denver, Boston College, Clarkson, UMass, Penn State, Providence, Duluth at number 10, Ohio State, Arizona State, Northeastern, UMass Lowell, Northern Michigan, Harvard, Michigan State, Quinnipiac, Bemidji State, and the aforementioned Sacred Heart. I believe this is their debut in the top 20.
I asked for it last week, Dakota, and I got what I asked for. The college hockey gods, they were paid, and there was a giant fall this week in the polls. Ohio State went from 6 to 11 after being swept by University of Minnesota, 6-3-4-1. They're 1-3-1 over the last 5 games, and I've been talking about it a lot. I want a giant fall in Ohio State. This is the biggest fall I've seen in about a month, and so I'm excited, but I feel bad for the Buckeyes, but they'll be okay.
They will be okay.
Up next in the biggest falls of the week, we're going back down to just a 2-spot drop. UMass Lowell from 12 to 14 after losing 5-0 to BU and then tying them 2-2. So, UML, good team. They got Tyler Wall, but they just didn't have it this weekend. But they'll be okay.
That happens.
On the other hand, high risers, Clarkson, just a two-spot rise from 8 to 6 after they beat Arizona State, who has been unbelievably sneaky good this year. Now number 12 in the polls, as you mentioned. Arizona State, good team.
Very good team. Often overlooked.
Clarkson, they beat them 2-1 in overtime, but then they lost in overtime 3-2. So the fact that they moved up even after losing to a good team, I think first off it shows a little respect to Clarkson as well as Arizona State in itself, because there's no looking past them anymore. That's a good squad over there. It's a good hockey team.
Agreed, Patrick.
And then the other one I want to touch upon, you touched upon it a little bit, Bemidji State, unranked to 19 after splitting the 2-game series versus Minnesota State. That's crazy. Bemidji State, good for them. We mentioned them once prior in this show. I forget who they beat, but they beat another big team.
They have some good wins on their schedule this season.
This is their debut, and I'm glad.
Me too. I'm very glad for Bemidji State.
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, I'm happy for Bemidji State. I hope that they can stick around for a couple weeks. We'll see what happens. But all in all, not the craziest poll.
Okay, good stuff. Well, now let's get into what we're all here for. Logan's been pretty radio silent over there.
No, I'm just pitching in when called upon. This is you guys' wheelhouse.
It's your debut on the Nesson College Hockey Podcast.
I
can understand why you might be a little gun shy. This is
I'm just gonna wait until you guys defer to me.
Okay. So the big topic is the Beanpot, of course, coming up starting next week. But really, the biggest story in sports, of course, is the death of Kobe Bryant. And again, I know this is obviously a college hockey podcast, but kind of a hard topic to not talk about. And so when we went to the Beanpot Media Day, we spoke with a few people about just what they thought, their general reactions to the Kobe Bryant news, and including Jerry York. We also spoke with Harvard co-captain Nathan Krusko and Northeastern head coach Jim Madigan. So we spoke to all of them about it. A lot of them said the same kind of things. Just a lot of respect for Kobe Bryant. Just shock at the news in general, sadness, everything that everybody else is feeling. And so I thought they all had some interesting things to say. Obviously, college hockey world could be much different than the NBA. Not a lot of overlap there in terms of fans and everything. But everybody sort of agreed that it's just a really unfortunate story, and obviously everybody huge fans of Kobe Bryant. So I thought they had a lot of interesting stuff to say, and so we'll just play all three clips for you back to back, and then get back here. But we'll start with Jerry York, and then go to Nathan Krusko, and then Jim Madigan. So let's toss it to them.
Oh, just startling to all of us. Came across the news on the bottom. I was watching something on TV, and 7 people I think were involved. All died in a helicopter crash. It's reminds me of previous situations like this. I think of Newt Walkney going way back as a
Clemente was one.
Yeah, Clemente was one. It's just. You gotta live every day, and you never know when the leaf's gonna come off the tree, right?
Right. Obviously, hockey. Kobe played basketball, not hockey. But even for anybody fans of any sport, he was a pretty big figure. Did any of your players, have you spoken to any of them since the news? Have any of them sort of been talking about it?
I think they were devastated by it. He's such an icon in sports in general. But also his daughter. You got to feel for it. And we have a local angle with a Cape Cod coach that was involved. So. All kinds of ramifications.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was just completely so unexpected. I actually remember exactly where I was. I was at the hockey rink and flipped through Twitter and saw the news, and I was absolutely stunned. Obviously I'm a hockey player, but basketball is very similar in a lot of ways. The competitiveness, the drive, and I have so much respect for Kobe and everything he accomplished in his long career, not only on the court but off the court as well. So it was crazy. But he's a legend of the game, and he's a legend of all sorts of sports. His legacy doesn't just stick to basketball, right? It kind of pervades all sports. So it's a terrible tragedy.
And just in general, obviously you've been with your teammates ever since then. Just how it hit those guys, and just if anybody's been talking about, and just were there any Kobe Bryant fans on the team, or just anything, how the rest of your team kind of reacted to it?
Yeah, I would say that the big reaction is just shock, right? It's something that nobody really obviously saw coming or anything like that. I don't think we have too many super diehard Kobe fans, but everyone respects him and everyone kind of understands what he's accomplished on and off the court. So definitely shock, and there's a little bit of sadness in the room, but I think kind of with what we have ahead of us and the tasks ahead of us, that it won't stick in the room for too long.
You're tragic, awful, devastating news, and someone said they'll remember where they were when they got the news, and I was in my living room yesterday afternoon, early, I think around 12 o'clock, and my youngest daughter works for hockey operations for the Devils, and they were away in Florida scouting meetings, and she texted me with the knowledge that Kobe died, and I just said, what do you mean? Nothing was on TV, there was no news report, and then you start digging a little bit and you go, wow, and it floored me. Heartfelt, prayers and thoughts to his wife and family. It's bad enough losing one family member, never mind 2 family members. And then the other families were affected. One family lost 3 members of the family, and with a little bit of ties here to New England, right? And then the baseball coach, and then the other family. So just devastating, sad news all around. And then obviously for Kobe, who was you knew he was ready to the next step of his career, his life, chapter of his life. He was already making an impact, and that was going to be a monumental impact, and it's just sad.
Were you with any of your players? Have you spoken to any of your players about it? Did they have any sort of reactions? Were they fans of Kobe? Anything like that?
Yeah, we chatted coming down here today, and I think we all watch Kobe and admire the skill and the hard work and the drive and the commitment, right? I mean, certainly he was a skilled player, but the effort and the drive and intensity he had just made him an elite player. And I think everyone's reaction is just you almost don't even think about the athlete. You just think about the family, right, and the man at 41 years of age and a 13-year-old 2-year-old daughter, that's the sad part and how it's going to affect his family moving forward. I remember when Reggie Lewis passed away at Northeastern, right? And Reggie was 2 years ahead of me, and I knew his wife Donna, and he had a young family, and his wife was pregnant, and young Reggie was born, and how that impacted the Northeastern community. It wasn't so much that we lost a great athlete, which we did. We lost a real good person.
Right.
I knew Reggie, and same thing. People, we lost a great person in Kobe, and those who knew him even that much better just got sad.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Again, I just want to thank Jerry York, Nathan Kresko, and Jim Madigan for speaking with us. Obviously, tough topic to talk about, but I feel like we had to address it in some way. It's obviously the biggest story in sports. And I thought those guys had some interesting comments and views on it. So I thank them again. But now, let's move forward to the actual action on the ice. We're all looking forward to the Beanpots. Again, one of probably the premier in-season college hockey tournament that there is. One of the best college sports tournaments in the nation, period, regardless of sport. And so I don't know who you would consider the favorite this season, but Northeastern are the two-time defending champions. And they have a great team again this year. So, they have... I think the big theme of this tournament is parity. I think all four teams have a realistic shot, but Northeastern, again, they're looking to get a three-peat, which will be amazing considering how long it took them to finally get, how long they went between championships. I forget what the gap was, but it was considerable. I think from the early 90s until I think when they won in 2017 or 2018. But again, but with that is, do they have a target on their back? And we talked to Coach Madigan a little bit more at Beanpot Media Day. About whether this team is going to use that target for a positive or whether it can be a negative. And I know, Logan, you spoke with Coach Madigan a bit. What were your takeaways from that? And just in general, what do you think about the Huskies' chances of pulling off a three-peat this season?
I appreciated Madigan's candor that he knows that there's kind of a target on their back. I mean, after a lengthy layoff, if you will, 1988 was the last time they had won the Beanpot up until snapping that drought in 2018. I think it was 5, maybe 6 times that they had lost in the final during that stretch. So gone are the days of them just falling in the final like we had seen around the turn of the millennium. But I think that with the way that they've played, certainly this season, they've got one of the better players in Hockey East in the country, in Tyler Madden, that it's not, it would not be shocking in the least bit if Northeastern wins again this year. They start with Harvard. That's a team that I think they match up pretty well with, even with BU being on the outside of the rankings right now. I mean, Harvard does have some flaws that I think that Northeastern probably could expose. And there's something to be said about the amount of local kids that they have. I believe it's 14 players on their team are Massachusetts natives. I think 5 of them, including one of their captains, Ryan Shea, is from Massachusetts. Another 2 are from New England.
Yes, this means a lot to them.
Yes, it means a lot to them. Ryan Shea was saying yesterday how his dad played for BC, so pretty much since Ryan Shea was born, the Beanpot has been in his family. It's been important. So between the success that they've had the last few years, plus all the local connections, which I know to a degree the three other teams also have, I think that there's a lot of significance for Northeastern, again, to make it a three-peat. And one way that Jim Madigan framed it during Media Day when he was talking to Tom Caron, in essence Tom Caron, was that they're trying to build firsts now. They're trying to keep things growing in the sense that, okay, we're not necessarily looking for a three-peat per se, but we're looking to have the first three-peat in program history. So I think they have pretty good perspective on this, and they're 13th in the country right now. They are a legitimate contender. So I think that this is very well positioned for Northeastern to make at least another deep-ish run, at least get to the final.
Yeah, and it's amazing. I was there in the press box a couple years ago when they broke that drought, and I was positioned very closely, like 5 feet away from the players who weren't playing, some of the coaches, other members of the staff that were up there, and you would have thought they just won the Stanley Cup when they clinched that win. I forget who they were playing. I think BU. Regardless, they were just so excited, and you could tell it meant a lot for that school and that program. Now, fast forward a couple of years, and it's almost like they expect to win it. And it's not to say the urgency is gone or anything, but it's just interesting where that program was 2 years ago and where it is now. Like you said, a legitimate contender, and powerhouse might be strong, but they are one of the better programs in the nation. But yeah, so before we go any further, I just want to toss it over back to head coach Jim Madigan, because I thought he had some interesting things to say about his team heading into the Beanpot.
The Beanpot comes at the right time because it starts the stretch drive for our hockey's playoffs. And the Beanpot, you got to win 2 games. It's sudden death. It's win and you advance, which is what the playoffs all about. It puts the urgency, the magnitude on each game. You got to win the first night in the Beanpot to get to the championship game. And so the focus, the preparation gets elevated. The determination, all of that, your play gets all elevated. So the Beanpot helps you down the stretch, and it's almost like it's 2 playoff games, and just as we're going to get ready, and we're going to play playoff type games in our league in Hockey East now, not come March. They're playoff games now because every game has important significance, and the runway gets tighter, right? It gets shorter, so that you have to understand the importance of every game, and the Beanpot helps bring that up and elevate that mindset.
With the success you guys have had in the Beanpot the last couple of years, is that also a nice kind of learning curve for the players of having a target on your back and maybe having a team try and play up for you guys a little bit?
Yeah, I said earlier, I think we got a little bit of a bullseye on our back, but what happened last 2 years Beanpot has no reflection, no relevance to this year's Beanpot. Teams are different, even though a lot of the players are the same, the teams are different. And for us, certainly there's a little bullseye, but maybe if anything, hopefully then it gets us to elevate our preparation, knowing that, hey, we're coming in as a 2-time defending champ, not a 1-time defending champ, but 2-time, and that we've got to be at our best in order to beat Harvard on on the first Monday.
For your players that aren't local, do they have to just kind of experience to get the vibe of the Beanpot, or is that something you or your captains kind of talk to them about what to expect?
Our players will talk about that, and we're fortunate. We have 14 of our 28, 29 players are from Massachusetts. Then we have another 3 or 4 from New England, so they understand the Beanpot. This is part of their DNA. They grew up going to the Beanpot, watching the Beanpot, and for the players who aren't around from this area, with social media and with the attention, to this tournament over the last few years, they understand the significance. They understand the importance. And even though they might not have played, as we get close to it, they start feeling it and hearing it. And our older players, are really good in terms of letting them know what to expect as we get there. Now, we can't look too far beyond because Friday is the most important thing for us, which is Providence. So the best preparation for next Monday is playing well on Friday.
All right, and we're back, and good stuff from Jim Madigan. Always a great interview, very candid up front, a lot of fun to talk to, and I think he rightfully believes in his team, and he's just done a great job over with Northeastern. So it'll be interesting to see if they can pull off the three-peat. But Patrick, I know you. I'm not going to say you don't believe in Northeastern. You've been a Harvard guy. Not to say, well, you're not a Harvard guy. Let's be clear. You're not that smart.
Yeah, let's be very clear about
you're not that smart.
Fun fact: I actually interviewed to go to Harvard, but didn't get in at that point.
How far did that go for you?
Further than
and now you're
expected.
Further than either of us, to be fair.
And then we're
Cody.
at the same desk right now. So what does that say?
It's a good thing.
I guess so. But anyway, you've been
It paved a good path.
You've been on the Crimson since day one this season.
Yes.
And have been a big believer in them. They've kind of disappointed you a little bit along the way. But what do you think are Harvard's chances heading into this tournament?
In reality, I think that their chances are pretty high. I know Logan just kind of said the opposite, and I couldn't disagree more. Harvard, they're 2-1-2 over the last 5, including a 1-1 tie versus Cornell. So right there in itself, I think that says a lot. Cornell is the toughest team they faced all season, and it was a 1-1 tie in overtime too. So I mean, that's the toughest team they faced, and they faced them really well, which is a good sign, seeing as they were struggling after starting off 7-0. To go along with that as well, they've also recently lost to Clarkson 5-3, but Clarkson, we just gave them a lot of love on the podcast because Clarkson is another one of the top teams, and they played them really well. So Harvard started off 7-0. Offense is on fire. It's cooled down, but they're still averaging just under 3.7 goals a game. You know what I mean? Like in comparison, BU's averaging 3.2. Northeastern's averaging 3.3. BC is higher than Harvard. They're averaging 3.8, but I mentioned earlier, I said I was going to flambe Boston College, which that was just a tease. I actually don't really have many negative things to say about Boston College, but
You have to deliver on the tease, Patrick.
But
You can't tease a flambe.
no, what I mean is
Yeah, it's
and
a strong
deliver
word.
A jar of fluff.
it's a strong word to keep people have people still listen.
It's a dull knife.
But so Boston College, I'm not saying only good things about Boston College. They've been struggling lately. They won 10 in a row, then blew the streak versus UMass. Got back in the right track. They won 3 in a row, and then we mentioned how they lost 2 this past weekend. So they're 3-3 over their last 6.
2 home games to make.
Exactly.
No less.
So BC is a team that, if there was a time throughout the season right now that they'd be vulnerable, I think it's right now.
Conversely, what if this is an opportunity for them to sort of reset, get back on track? They are, the 5th ranked team in the country? I mean, they have the talent there.
Absolutely. So that's why I'm glad that Harvard's not facing them in the first round.
Yeah,
because
you're Crimson.
I think this would be I think it'd be a good championship game. But so like I mentioned, so Harvard, they also have faced both BC and BU this season, and so while they did lose to both of them, so
Not a good start.
that's a bad sign. But so they played both teams well. BC was 4-2, BU 5-2. So like I said, those are just 2 good games. But so after watching those games, you can learn from them, hopefully, and apply that to the Beanpot. They haven't faced off against Northeastern. Their first matchup will be this Monday on Nesson. But so BU, they've been kind of wishy-washy this season. Northeastern's good, like Logan mentioned. They're 13th in the polls, and they've won the last 2. But Harvard, I think, is the best team set up to win right now, aside from Boston College. And I'm only not mentioning them because they've been kind of struggling lately. The offense itself, I think, will power them. I've mentioned on the podcast before, I told you right now their number is 3.7 goals per game. But that's taken into account their struggles. For the first quarter of the season, they were averaging over 5 goals a game. So This is still the same team, and I wouldn't doubt it if they come out and they just put up a 5-piece and then head over to the championship game in style.
Yeah.
I got a lot of faith in them.
You do? Well, we'll see. We'll see how that turns out. I also believe in Harvard. I think listen, that's the great thing about the tournament this year is, for years this has been about BU versus BC, and it's just the first night is just the first game to the semifinals rather are just a means to an end because it's always BU and BC in the championship, or if they face in the first round, which is one of those teams is going to get to the championship and win it. But any one of these 4 teams can make it this year, really, and they're all the only one that's not in the national rankings is BU, and I think they're trending in the right direction.
Getting a lot healthier.
They're getting a lot healthier, and which is even without Amonte, one of their best players. Obviously, they haven't had him all year, but they've just gotten contributions from across the board from a lot of guys, and they're starting to play very well. I know Albie O'Connell believes in this team. At the end of the day, BC has to be the favorite, I think, for this tournament, just because they're the best team. And they're led by David Cotton, who's had a fantastic year. Spencer Knight in goal. He's been great. You wonder if maybe those 2 losses against Maine have them going into the Beanpot a little bit cold.
Well, they do have UMass on Friday. That'll be a big one.
Right, so that's a get-right opportunity for them to sort of and is it Northeastern that's playing Providence, too?
Yep.
I don't know who BU's playing. I forget. Regardless, both. So at least
BU has Vermont.
BU has Vermont, so maybe that's an opportunity for them to blow doors and feel good about themselves.
Yeah.
So I think all 3 programs have a chance this weekend to sort of head into the Beanpot on the right foot. But ultimately, BC just has so much talent. They're a legitimate national championship contender. They should win this tournament, but I don't think they will. I'm just going to go out on a limb and pick BU, my alma mater.
Spicy.
Yeah, spicy.
A little home cooking.
Little home cooking. Well, alma mater for where I got my master's anyway. I actually grew up hating BU, but regardless. I just think
That's a complicated relationship.
they've beaten Northeastern this year. They've beaten Harvard. They lost 4-3 to BC. But they've beaten some other really great teams. They beat UMass, who's one of the best programs in the country. They beat Lowell over the weekend. I believe they've also beaten Providence. So they know how to play against some of the best teams in the country. And again, they're not as talented as they have been in the past. A lot of young players, a lot of freshmen. And so you wonder how that's going to play in a game like this. Is it going to be they're going to get nervous, too much inexperience, or is it kind of that ignorance that can kind of help you out in these spots where you don't know that you're supposed to be nervous? Who really knows? They're the underdog. How does that play? But I think it's all going to play well because I just like the way they've been playing in the second half of the season as they've gotten healthier. I think Albie O'Connell's message has gone through to those guys, and I think they're starting to realize how good that they can be, and now they're starting to sniff that if they keep this going, what at once seemed like a season that might not end, going to the national tournament or making much noise in Hockey East, could be the opposite if they keep going. And I think this is an opportunity for them to really solidify who they are, prove that they are, again, they're not BU of old, but they are a team to be reckoned with both in Hockey East and in the country. And I think I like their odds.
Well, they've got a lot at stake on starting Monday in the Beanpot, because I believe they got a couple of votes in the latest poll.
Yes.
They're basically gunning for an at-large bid for the most part for the tournament later this year. So wins over BC and either Northeastern or Harvard would certainly go a long way in sort of boosting their stock and their perception around the country. And to your point about them having so much youth, that makes you wonder just how good they might be in a couple of years as some of these guys grow a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, I fully expect within the next year or two for BU to look as they normally do. But yeah, it is an opportunity for them to get a couple statement wins that look much better when it comes time to select the at-large bids for the tournament. So I don't know. I got a good feeling about the Terriers heading into this one. They are the all-time leader in Beanpot championships. They have 30. BC is second with 20. Harvard has 11. Northeastern was 6. Of course, 2 in the last 2 years. So it shouldn't be a shock if BU wins, considering their track record as a program. But again, considering where they've been this season, I guess that would be a surprise. But I feel good about it. Rolling with the Terriers. But again, we'll see what happens when the games start. So I don't really have much else on the Beanpot. I guess we have to wait for the games to start. We're also obviously looking forward to the women's Beanpot. I believe Northeastern is the defending champion, or is it BU? BU is the defending champion, right. BU is defending champion. I believe they're 7th in the country right now. The great thing about the women's Beanpot, like the men's Beanpot, is it really is wide open. 3 of the teams are in the top 10 in the polls, I believe. Northeastern is number 3, BU is 7, Harvard's 10th. So they're all the teams really, and you can never sleep on BC. I think Northeastern has to be the favorite. They've been the best team out of all 4 this year. And every time you see them, I've caught in a few of their games on Nesson so far this season. They're impressive every single time. And so I think they have to be considered the favorite, but BU defending champion, you never know, and it's the Beanpot. So just anything can really happen. So we're obviously looking forward to both of those. We will have Logan and our Lauren Campbell, who will be joining us in the podcast next week, going to both those games, women's Beanpot, men's Beanpot, all of it, bringing you great coverage, so you can go to Nesson.com and see all of their great work and check all of it out. We have a lot of content this week leading up to it, too, that we're really excited about. So yeah, Beanpot season. Nothing like it. Very exciting. So we don't have much time left. We've kind of gone a little bit long. Before we get out of here, I want to give you the Nesson schedule one more time. It all starts Friday. The pair of women's hockey matchups, UConn at Northeastern at 2 p.m. on Nesson. Vermont at BU at 7 p.m. on Nesson Plus. Saturday, only one hockey game, UNH at UConn at 4 p.m. on Nesson. Chance for the Wildcats to get another big win. I think that's going to be an interesting series. And then Monday, the men's Beanpot semifinals, both games on Nesson. Harvard at Northeastern at 5 p.m. Then BC at BU at 8 p.m. Of course, the night game is always the big one there once the crowd fills in. It should be a really great environment over at TD Garden. And then Tuesday, the women's Beanpot semifinals, Harvard, Northeastern at 5 p.m. on Nesson Plus, and BC, BU at 8 p.m. on Nesson Plus. Of course, the winners play the following week for the championship. And again, all of our hockey's coverage is brought to you by Rockland Trust, where each relationship matters. One more matter to get to, just a few games I'm looking forward to this weekend. Quinnipiac and Cornell. Quinnipiac had that weird loss against Sacred Heart. Well, it shouldn't be weird, I guess. Sacred Heart is a pretty decent team. Cornell had a couple tough, really close games this past weekend, so I just think it doesn't really matter for Cornell. They're the number 1 team in the country, but it's a real opportunity for Quinnipiac to prove that this sort of mid-season surge hasn't been a fluke, that they are the team that many expect them to be before they went on their they went on a weird lull after getting off to a good start to the season. So a big chance for Quinnipiac. Minnesota State, Alaska Anchorage, 2-game series at Minnesota State. Upset alert, I am picking Alaska Anchorage.
Ooh.
I've been plugging the Alaska teams all season. I'm not picking a sweep or anything, just a split. But I think Anchorage rolls in there and gets a victory over Minnesota State. Minnesota Duluth, Denver, 2-game series, speaks for itself, 2 of the best teams in the country. Bowling Green, Bemidji State now kind of bursting onto the scene, showing everybody how good they are. Bowling Green, been an underrated program all season. Should be a really great series between those two, or it might be one game, I forget. Regardless, should be good hockey. And UConn and UNH. UConn, I believe, is tied for the 8th spot, or they're just out. I think they're the 8th spot in Hockey East, so this is a big game for them. UNH currently 6th. Regardless, this is an opportunity for UNH, first of all, to continue what's been a really good stretch for them, and probably if you can sweep this series, they probably get into the national polls for the first time this season. And for UConn, just in general, every win matters, every game matters for them as they fight for a playoff spot. So it should be two desperate teams, and should be some good action. Obviously, I'm rooting for UNH in those. So that's all I got. It's been fun, guys. Logan, I hope you come back again.
I'll try to. Thanks for having me, boys.
I think you're very welcome.
Our pleasure.
I think the plan is for you to come back at least in a couple weeks after the Beanpot Championship game.
Yeah, I'll be around. You know where to find me.
I do know where to find you. At the bottom of my shoe. So we're looking forward to that.
Maybe I won't be back.
Again, anything else you want to add, Pat? Just want to get out of here, don't you?
I'm just excited. I'm excited to watch 4 fantastic teams clash at the TD Garden.
Me too. Looking forward to it.
On Nesson.
So we will recap all of this weekend's action and the first round of the Beanpot next week rather. So again, thank you for listening this week, and we will catch you next time on the Nesson College Hockey Podcast.